Welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy day to attend my Future of Work presentation. My name is Ryan Thomas, and today I will spend a quick 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how fast I can get through it, with some Q&A at the end, discussing the role of technology in overcoming today's challenge and some of the future of work and where technology will sort of be a part of our future if it isn't already. And I will try to make good use of your time today, and I will try to move quickly and efficiently. So thank you very much. Okay, real quickly, an agenda. First of all, it's been a rough road in 2020 for many organizations, many people. We're all human beings here trying to get work done. For others, it's been a massive awakening for some of the issues that they may not have seen that they may have had. And for plenty, it's been a huge catalyst for digital transformation and change. And I think we've had a lot to learn during this year, and hopefully a lot of wisdom that we can share with each other. And putting the slide together, or the slide deck together, I was really thinking about the term resiliency, because just my situation at home, 13 and 14-year-old boys, trying to get them to go to school, and the school is teaching resiliency. They have long before a pandemic, and so it's been an important sort of term in my world already. And I looked online to try to get some imagery to kind of spice things up a little bit. And a lot of what came up was what you see on the left, which is the little plant sort of growing through a sidewalk or something like that. And I always looked at resiliency as more of a rubber band, which is you can kind of take a beating and you get stretched, you get pulled, but you can get back to normal sort of realistically. I don't necessarily look at it the way I see a lot of the imagery online, which is almost like survival, right? That I would say that any of you that are running a business and you were a tree and now you're a small twig growing out of a sidewalk, you probably wouldn't consider that success. So surviving isn't necessarily good enough. So just sort of curious, maybe school of thought for people, like how do you guys look at resiliency? And I would imagine the business world, it's a little bit more of the rubber band style. And with that in mind, how did you do this year? Now's a really good opportunity to kind of take stock, do some reflection. I've done a lot of reflection this year. And what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What did I not see coming? What are some of those intentional capabilities that we can develop or have developed to help ourselves do better moving forward? And some key elements that we've worked on this year with our customers, and obviously internally as well, would be how we communicate effectively, how we would allow people to go back to the workforce, or how our customers will allow people to go back, to the office within the workforce. How we make sure people stay socially engaged, and what sort of things we can think about proactively to make sure that happens. What about business continuity? What are some things that fell apart for you when you had to leave the office very quickly? What are some things that you learned about that, and how can you address it? How have you addressed it? And some key initiatives will be how do you rethink how you addressed it? Sometimes the Band-Aid solution isn't the right one, and have you identified if it's a Band-Aid or not? And then how do we plan for this moving forward? Like if you're going to learn anything from this, I would say that's the sort of final slide, right? The coup de grace would be how you're going to make sure that you address this moving forward. There's not much we can do about what happened 8 months ago, but what can we do over the next 8 months, 12 months, 2 to 3 years? Okay. So what qualifies me to talk to you about this? What makes me so special? Well, I mean, nothing really makes me that special, but I can tell you that I started my company in 2010, and I wasn't planning it to deal with a crisis, but I wanted to build a company that had mostly remote workforce. And I did that because I wanted to find talent nationally, right? It was very difficult in the Boston market necessarily to find the right level of talent at competitive pricing for the kind of services that I was providing, which was not really a lot of cloud services in 2010. And I really enjoyed a cultural, sort of a diverse cultural background. I like to get different ideas from different people from different walks of life. It was really important. And I wanted to be able to make sure we covered various time zones when we started to migrate into more like a support mode instead of a sort of a pure project type of business. I didn't want any on-premise requirements. It was cloud only from the start. I didn't want to have an office for a specific need like that. I've seen too much dependencies on on-premises systems, regardless of a pandemic, to make that something that was something that I wanted to have be an issue in my organization. So we built all of our system and processes around sort of the cloud first initiative. And because we started that way, all of our communications were based on not necessarily being in front of each other. So we had to learn early, and it'll be a couple things that I talk about today, is how do you effectively manage people when everybody's 100% remote? And we've talked to a lot of our customers, senior leaders, super afraid of this. And it's just been so near and dear to our heart. We embraced this early on. And we definitely took our lumps, but we learned a few things. And you'll see this come up a few times, but I'm going to put in a plug for a book that really, really changed my life from a business perspective, which is called Traction from Gino Wickman. And it's like an operating system for how to run your business. And you don't have to take all of it, but some really key aspects of how to make sure that you can properly evaluate employees who are working remotely was a key element of it. So you'll hear that book mentioned again today. Strongly recommend taking a read through it. It's not one of those pie in the sky, try to figure it out books. It's almost like a blueprint, which is what I liked about it. I'm kind of a direct person. So we were built a company around staying connected. We walked out of the office in March and never went back, and we're not going back. As a matter of fact, I was a little worried about my employees, mostly from a mental health perspective for the first 3 to 4 weeks, but then realized like they were buoying me as opposed to me buoying them. Like they're already prepared for this, and we've actually done better as a result. And recently to the point where we merged with a larger managed services provider. So our business was thriving during this, sort of during the epidemic. And this company that we merged with, Thrive, are now our parent organization, and they really see the value that we bring to the table, which was, we help people, and we specialize in helping people use these Microsoft collaboration tools to improve the digital transformation journey. And so I know some of you are going to say, hey, wait a minute, that's an unfair advantage, cry foul, like no wonder you know how to do this stuff. But fair enough. Okay, but I will say this, that these cloud tools didn't really exist when I started the company. They were in their infancy at best and weren't great. But I knew that having specialized in sort of, collaboration software in general, that the capabilities were out there, and I stayed on top of it so that when they came out, we could address them and make them a part of our sort of core culture. And so the key message here isn't that, we had a leg up on the race. It's that we were intentionally making ourselves aware of what the capabilities were so that we knew how to solve problems when we identified the problems. If you don't know there's a solution to a problem out there, you're never going to go find it, right? So you got to have some knowledge and training about what some of these collaboration and cloud capability tools can provide for you, and anybody can do that, right? If you put some effort in, you can do it. Okay. So issue number one, or sort of item number one, is communication. So this is going to be a key one. It's in some ways it's very nebulous, but it's also, there's some concrete ways to address it. And this slide, I felt like it was important to break it up into kind of a, what are the issues, what are the goals, and what are the solutions? And, I would say the issues, and again, every organization is different. Your mileage may vary. I understand, but there are some common themes. Even though each of our journeys has been unique, I think there's a lot of overlap in problems that we've shared. So first is disruption, right? So if you had a heavily focused workforce in the office, people that had coffee, had drive-by, like we call them drive-by communications or walk-by communications. People would stop and talk. They had in-person meetings. They drop into somebody's office or desk. And those people all of a sudden had to work from home. That's going to cause disruption, right? So all of a sudden, the supplemental communication is gone. And that leaves people feeling very disconnected, uninformed. And they're already like anxious and frustrated. I mean, I'm frustrated with trying to keep my kids in school during the day or keep them at least concentrating on school while I have to work too. So you're getting pressure from all sides at this point. And then it doesn't really help that at the top, the leadership level, they're probably feeling the same thing, because all of a sudden they'd see all these people and now they don't know where they are. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know if they're doing well, both personally or professionally. They don't know if the information they are sending out, probably over email, is getting received, understood. What are people doing with it? It's that kind of fear, right? Because if you can't see it, so you don't know what's happening. So the goal is really to sort of make sure that that your communications are pushed and everybody's getting them, and to make sure that the right people are getting the right information, to make sure that it is actually received and that it is understood, and if it's actionable information, people are doing things with the information, and to make sure that no matter where they are, the continuity of that is as seamless as possible. So if you're at an airport, if you're at home, if you're at a remote work site, that you have access to the information the same as somebody who was in the office would as well. Like it can't be a tiered level of quality based on where you are. And then the goal would be to maintain your employee engagement. Really, that's the ultimate goal, is to make sure they know what's going on and that they're engaged with your organization. If they're engaged, they'll be okay. I just want to point out that this is a technology-based presentation. So, if you're using older technology stacks, you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage to do these or sort of to complete these activities. And I'm trying to make this as technology agnostic as possible, and I will. But just keep that in mind that if you're not embracing some of the new technology capabilities out there, it will be an uphill battle. Okay, I know there's a lot of stuff on this slide, and I could spend a lot of time on this slide, but I will try not to for the sake of time. First and foremost, email. Email used to be great. 15, 20 years ago, email was awesome. It was a way to asynchronously communicate with somebody. I didn't have to answer the phone and disrupt what I'm doing. I can come back and check on it and get stuff done. But if anybody is like me, and I'm sure many are, email has got to the point where it's really, really difficult. They get buried. They get forgotten. Once you get enough emails coming in, which is in the next 15 minutes, they sort of scroll down below the fold, they call it, in which case out of sight, out of mind. If you didn't get a chance to flag it, you forget it. I used to be really good at managing this stuff, but now you get so much email, and most of it isn't really even applicable because of just the ability for spam to just continue to push you. And even if it's not spam, it's still not necessarily applicable. And it's noise. It gets in the way. There's no context to email. And it's gotten very difficult with the sheer volume to manage it. So, deliberately, intentionally start using other tools for communication. Like for us, it's Teams, it's intranet, it's using SharePoint or even Teams for that matter. It's sites that are built around sort of work streams. It's mentioning people in social settings. It's channel-driven communication, and it's deliberate. I'm intending to put it in this particular location because this location has context. Email has no context. In this location, this information will persist, which means if I type a bunch of stuff in here and then I get a bunch of people replying to me, it will still be here tomorrow, right in the same spot. And so if I don't have time to go check this now, but I see that it's flagged as unread or I got a notification, I will go when I have a few minutes and follow up on this whole thread and give it the attention it deserves. And I know that it's in the architecture group in our case, which I don't need to check every single day, unless someone mentions me, in which case they know that they need something from me quickly, and therefore I'll look at it faster. That is a much more modern, effective, contextual way to communicate than classic email. And think about where you put this stuff. So CEO Corner is going to be, like leadership kind of level communication. Stick it on the intranet homepage. Program or project management updates could go on the project site or the project team location, and it could get pushed information to everybody or just to the team. Right? You have a lot more options now for persistence, how, when, expiration of content. Really, I'll keep hammering it on context-based communication. Context and persistent communication and deliberate is really kind of where the modern world is going. Make sure it goes to a certain place. Make sure people get it. So ensure notification, that's easy with modern tools. Make sure that they're just getting like a tickler email. Don't put the content in the email, but drive them to the tools where the information lives so they get used to sort of start to live in that world. I've made email much more manageable for me now because I don't have to live in the world of email as my entire communication stack. I use Teams, email, and then some social stuff in the Microsoft tool set for most of my communication. I can sort of leave email as a more manageable device as opposed to my catch-all for everything. So obviously information has to be useful, but what I mean by useful is useful for the target audience, right? Make sure that you're not sending, like, one of the reasons why email got so difficult is because of the spam concept. This isn't appropriate for this particular location. It's not useful for me. Where I am right now, like, this isn't really helping me. So don't have people putting their classified ad discussions in your project management or your specific project site. Like that should have its own location so people don't start to feel like it's clutter or garbage or the concept of noise like I talked about. Okay, and it's a top-down approach. It's really got to be based on a leadership that really wants to drive this forward. And so start with them and ask them to buy in and ask them to commit to communicating in this way. You build systems to make it happen. It doesn't happen overnight. It is a commitment. And communication has become a two-way street now. There will be some push-only communications where, organizationally wide, this is a notification. I don't really want any feedback. Feedback isn't necessary. But I would say that's the less the norm nowadays. Most of the time, you want to encourage feedback, discussions, and you just want to put it in a place where it doesn't clutter up any other feedback, like in a little discussion channel or something like that, where you can collapse it. And if I want to hear people talking or asking questions, great. It lives here. If people want to know, they can go get it, but it doesn't get in the way of anything else. It's not an email reply all to the entire company that all of a sudden you're getting inundated with, right? So and in the world of COVID right now, we actively encourage, communication, maybe a little over feedback stimulation, because we really need to work a little bit harder to engage people. So I would encourage it, even if it's not 100% appropriate in all cases. And real last element on this slide is meetings. I know meetings are a point of contention with a lot of people a lot of the time. Again, I'll refer back to the Traction book by Gina Wickman. There's a really great formula for meetings in there. It really kind of, I won't steal all the thunder, but it kind of segues you away from work for a second to kind of stop and think. Maybe it makes it a little more personal, right? We're trying to engage people. But then it has a really kind of strict agenda, and the agenda involves each person in the meeting who's there has a reason to be there, right? So you've got an issue. We do a weekly issues meeting. I'm going to refer to that meeting, where we talk about our issues each week, and there's a strict agenda on, we identify the issues, we triage the issues. The meeting starts on time, it ends on time. Everybody rates the meeting at the end, and then action items are taken as a result. And every person is asked, like, what are your issues? What do you want to add to the table this week? They don't have any, that's fine. And then the issues are triaged, they're discussed, and actions are agreed to, and that we follow up on the next week, and those are to-dos. So what I find is that if someone never says anything in a meeting, even though they're kind of actively encouraged and asked, after 5 or 6 of those meetings, you might stop and say, is this person really appropriate for this meeting? So it helps you kind of filter out the right people for the right meetings. Maybe this is not the appropriate setting for this person because they're never participating, because the agenda really helps drive it. Anyway, lots of options for meetings. I'm sure it's a struggle for many, but use technology, use a blueprint to sort of help make it better and more engage your employees. Okay, so this is probably my only COVID specific or pandemic specific slide, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, because I think I hope that this slide isn't going to be something that's necessary sort of in the future of work. But it is something that's really good for everybody to know right now. I'll spend a minute or two here. So Microsoft does have a solution called Return to the Workplace, and it's built on the Power Platform stack, which is sort of unique to the Microsoft collaboration cloud stack. And it's made up of Power Automate, which is a workflow sort of automation tool, Power Apps, which is kind of a front-end forms data collection presentation UI tool, and Power BI. So most of you are probably familiar with those if you're familiar with the Microsoft stack, to do visualization or business intelligence visualization around data in your environment. And Microsoft has a pre-built solution for returning to work that they're providing. It's free. So if you're already using these tools, you already have the Microsoft licensing, it's free for you. Some configuration is necessary, but they've pre-built a bunch of forms, a bunch of charts, a bunch of sort of data collection metrics that allow you to look at a location like a city or a town in terms of its statistics for risk, specific employee forms for self-assessments. I want to check into a facility. I want to make a request. You get a pass or a ticket if you can see the little mobile screens. So forms to collect that data. So kind of managing the safety or the assessment at an individual level. How many people are in a facility at a point in time? Were there any issues? And then specific like facility maintenance, like was there an outbreak in a facility? What's the cleanliness situation? What it allows you to do is collect information, look at information, and use key performance indicators to figure out if they fall within the tolerances that you've set for your organization, and obviously meeting local state guidelines depending on where you live, to allow you to make decisions about what you want to let people do in terms of going to work or not. So again, free solution. Check it out. Ask us if you have any questions about it as well. Okay. This one's near and dear to my heart. So social engagement is critical. A socially engaged employee, you got a chance to help maintain, keep going with. And so I will harp on this to the day is long. It's as much informal as it is formal in the world of keeping people connected and engaged. So video meetings, I know everybody has probably started to hate video meetings. I have too. But what I would say is there are times when it's appropriate, and then times when you can maybe say, hey, look, we don't have to have video on. But there are going to be times when you need to talk to people, you need to see people, you need to look them in the eye, you need to make sure they're doing okay. You need to see the inflection, see the inflection, hear the inflection. But you can do that sparingly, right? You can pick and choose and give people a little bit of a break if they are going to the gym or hadn't taken a shower today, instead of requiring or forcing it. I think there's a happy middle ground there. And you got to sort of evaluate it for your culture. But some more specific stuff that actually gets people kind of working together when they're apart. Screen sharing and co-authoring. We do that a lot because the tools support it, and it's something we train our customers on and love the tools. Virtual whiteboarding, there's a really robust sort of multi-user editing of Office documents where you can see other people working in real time. You can make comments. You could be on the phone or on a chat call while you're working on a document together. I'm going to make this change. What do you think of that? Really get ways to people to almost like they're in a room whiteboarding together, working on something, even though they could be across the world. Really start to think about segmenting work into more of the contextual bucket, right? Channels. One of the things I really like about Teams and why it's taken off so well is that it provides a really good sort of collaboration area that the Microsoft stack never had, but it allows you to do it in a very bucketed, targeted location. So I don't have to sort of be inundated with all of the communications from lots of stuff all over the place or have to go find it. In the specific channel on a specific project or product for a specific task, if you can have a channel and you can have people working there, right? And I know when people are working there, I see it go bold on the screen, or I see the exclamation point go up that, oh, some information has changed there. Or they've mentioned me, which means I get notified that like something is important to me there because they're calling me out. I know to go there. If not, I can go check up on the progress. Really having particular work locations. It's like having a room or a meeting room to work in on a particular project. This is the project meeting room. Go in here and here's where all the stuff is. And you can go look at all the conversations from the past and sort of, I would say, log in, quote unquote, whenever you need to. Keep the chatting going. The replacement for drive-by, the walk-bys is the private. What I mean by private and public is, the one-on-one chats versus the group chats or the team group chats, where let's say, we have a chat for the whole company where we're trying to give company news out, but we want it to be social and interactive. Not the same as an intranet push notification where we don't necessarily want a whole bunch of feedback on the intranet homepage, right? Like deliberate social engagement where it's appropriate in different locations. If you don't have any awareness of the locations or how to set them up or where to do it, you won't be able to do this. This is why awareness of the tools and their capabilities is critical, as I mentioned. And then the little things like the contests. We do kudos. If the customer or employee nominates another employee for doing something great, we kind of read it out loud. Then we try to guess who wrote it, and we give a DoorDash a free lunch to the recipient. We kind of make a big deal out of it because it is a big deal, and not trying to downplay it. It's important that we let people know that we care about the work they're putting in. We are staying connected with them as human beings, not just robots delivering technology solutions. And it's a way to make sure that people feel appreciated, even if I can't buy them lunch in the office on a regular basis. Lunch and learns are a critical piece too. I know they used to be a big deal and they kind of lost favor in recent years, but they become a bigger deal in our organization. What we'll do is we'll pick a topic, pretty much any topic. I mean, if it's related to work, great. If it's related to a product or a customer, great. But really, it's someone who's passionate about something that they want to share. And if anybody will attend the virtual meeting, we'll buy them lunch and have it delivered. So you say, hey, you're going to come to this meeting, you get 15, 20 people showing up, and someone gives a presentation, and it's social, right? It isn't necessarily a dry thing. They ask questions, they have lunch, they talk, they laugh, and they learn something, and they get socially engaged. I feel like it's kind of like the trifecta, right? You just did a whole bunch of good things in one meeting without a lot of work or a lot of spend. I already talked about team meetings, really adding sort of the personal approach, making sure that people are engaged that are in meetings, and all of this is to show that you care about your employees. They're human beings, and we need them, and we care about them, and we want to make sure that they are okay and that they will be effective employees moving forward. Right? It's all a win-win for everybody. It's not all I want is an effective employee. I don't care if their mental health goes down the tubes, and it's not all I want is a happy employee. I don't care if they're effective. It's got to be both, and there's ways to achieve both. The final note I want to leave with on this is it's really important is encouraging feedback. So we have tried to become more of a feedback organization. What I mean by that is effective feedback is really letting people know how they did, like giving them an opportunity to improve. And the way you got to do that is you got to be a guinea pig. You got to have the leadership allow themselves to get feedback from people in a kind of a public enough forum that people feel comfortable doing it. Like, hey, how was my presentation? What did I think? What could I improve on? Where did I miss the mark at all? And really require that people tell me what I need to get better. If everybody just says you're doing great, it's really hard for me to get better. I really need to hear some of that constructive, I don't even want to call it criticism, but like effective feedback. It's hard to get better if you don't know where any of your shortcomings are. And so that's a good way to get people sort of interacting. Okay. Business continuity. So this one, everybody's business is different, and I don't know everybody that's attending the session. So it's hard for me to sort of make recommendations, but I can give you some, I would say, an approach and some solutions that we're seeing a lot of, and maybe give you a high level. First, I look at it as like, what are the issues? Like, so I look at it like this: in the past 6 or 8 months, you have gotten an absolute education in one way or another on where things in your organization fell short when you hit a crisis, a certain kind of crisis. And so you can figure out, well, what worked, what didn't work, what breaks, or what broke. And hopefully you took advantage of this education and said, I learned something, and I won't make the same mistakes again, right? So have you effectively addressed it? And some of the ways that we do that are triage, right? So we look and say, if you are where you are now and you're looking forward, or you still have things to fix, you have a list of things that are broken or are going to break, and you say, okay, like these are the important systems, and how important are they going to break, and how important are they to my organization's like ability to stay sort of effective, right? How to continue an everyday business. And then once you sort of have that list and you know what the important ones are, you have to know what your options are to fix them. Like I said, if you don't have no idea that there are tools out there to fix anything, you may be really good at identifying that you have a problem, but you have no idea how to fix it. The good news is that's a pretty easy solution. There are plenty of experts out there that you can present problems to, and they will start to give you ideas on how to fix them with technology. So that's another set of problems I won't go into today, but the bottom line is educating yourself on the awareness of the tools will give you a leg up, because it also helps you think about how to solve the tools, or in the case of your portfolio, which is the next item, what's easier to solve than others. So the portfolio in the classic sense would be all of the items that you've identified that you would like to fix, and then you sort them and base them based on their risk, their cost, their ease of implementation, how important they are to business continuity, and you kind of rank them like, this is what we got to do first. This is what we can't do because of dependencies. And that's that constant list on your roadmap that you're driving to make your organization better. And anybody who doesn't have a portfolio of sort of things on the roadmap they want to get done, they probably should. And just really quick, some solutions are, we've converted a lot of paper-based processes that required, people in an office. We converted those to digital workflows, right? Obviously, if you can't go in the office, you can't get there, but you got to get this work done. That's a critical item. Onboarding and offboarding employees, like hiring and letting people go, or people resign. You have to have a way to do that where you're not necessarily face-to-face. Applications or tools that replace kind of in-person needs in general. And when I use the term transactions in here, I don't mean like point-of-sale transactions. I mean people to people. How do I use technology, applications, or platforms to replace some of those capabilities, right? It doesn't replace the social part of it. We've talked about that already. But how about the physical need for data to change hands and things to get done? And then, I mentioned employee productivity assessments. And I called that out specifically because that's the critical one a lot of people have been afraid of, is what are my people doing working from home? I'm putting monitoring software on their computers, all this kind of stuff. And we learned this early, again, that the Gino Wickman book, Traction, that if you give people kind of a set of targets and you assess them with what they call the people analyzer, that has worked wonders for us not having to micromanage people. I never wanted to micromanage people. I want to make it clear what your objectives are, make sure that the roadblocks are out of the way, that you need help, and then verify that it got done later without any micromanagement. And that's what everybody should be striving for as you move more towards what will be a remote workforce. A lot of this is going to stick. If you're not comfortable with it, you got to solve that problem. And there are methods to solve that problem. And I would really concentrate on what is it that they do that I need to be provided metrics on to make sure it's getting done. And then you only have to make an issue out of something when it's not getting done, as opposed to constantly checking what they are doing. So I would harp on that. I could probably spend a whole hour talking about how to do that. That's critical, and it's not even a technology element, although you can use technology to do it. But really what it comes down to is get past old school methods of thinking. And if you can't because you don't have the awareness, I'm glad you're attending a session like this. So you're taking the first step. If you're already an old vet, then great. I will just leave you with this kind of note on this slide is, I looked at like which organizations fared well this year and which didn't and why. I mean, there's obviously, Zoom and Amazon. Okay, great. Like they were perfectly set up for something like this. All of a sudden people go remote and they need help. Okay, that makes sense. But what about, restaurants, hotels, service industries, people that really were hit hard? What made them how did some do better than others? And then I think about, Blockbuster Video and Polaroid and these companies that, and Sears that had the market like wrapped around their finger. They had all market share and they just watched as their business eroded because I don't know how they couldn't see. I don't know how Blockbuster couldn't see Netflix eating their lunch. They didn't either try to buy them or duplicate them or spend money to oust them early on. They just watched them beat them until they were gone. And businesses that prepared for this, or at least reacted faster and created mobile applications, worked quickly to do transactions in a different way and got by at least, were the ones that at least hung in there. And there were plenty that didn't. And it's a shame to see, but I'm hoping that it doesn't happen again. And this is my last slide, I promise. And this is probably also the most important slide, because if you don't learn anything else or take anything else I say seriously, please take this one seriously. So, because all you have is from right now moving forward, right? And you can't do anything about what happened 6 months ago. So really, this starts at the top down. Hopefully, if you're a leader in your organization, it starts with you. It starts with the other leaders. Like you have to want and care and demonstrate that sort of working through technology, digital transformation is something that's important to you. It's important to your organization, and you have to be able to articulate why. We're doing this for a specific reason. This is why it's going to help us. And there are hundreds of thousands of reasons out there that you could pick from. Yours are going to be somewhat unique to you, but again, there's probably a lot of overlap. And you have to hire for it. So if I wanted to hire a remote workforce or a cloud-only workforce, but yet I hired only people that had only ever worked in offices or didn't care about learning new stuff or hadn't learned any of the new stuff, I'd be facing a real uphill battle. Change is hard already, but if you're hiring people that haven't already shown a penchant for change, you're making it hard for yourself. So think about that in your core values when you're interviewing people. If you're hiring for people that are where you want to get to, not necessarily where you are right now. And think about the key elements that I call it the convergence, that your business changes, your employees and your culture change, and the technology changes. All that stuff are moving targets that you need to constantly be managing and figure out how you can make the best out of that. But I embrace change. I look at change as opportunity. Other people don't, especially changing technology. Changing technology is an opportunity to do it better. And I look at it as Lego blocks. When I first started using Lego blocks, or it's you glue 2 blocks together, you throw some tires on it, you roll it across the floor, and you go, "Hey, look what I built." But then you look at the castle and the knights at 1,000 pieces, and you try to put that together, and you have no idea how to do it. Well, the more you learn what these tools can do for you, collaboration tools, digital transformation tools, sort of the more advanced you get on your journey to build bigger and better Lego capabilities. And even if you don't want to be the guy building the castle and the knights, as long as you can see it, you visualize it, you know that it's useful, you could get someone to do it for you. But if you don't even know that it's out there and you can't see how awesome it is, then you won't even strive for it. Kaizen. So we have an internal project. Our whole company is actually based on this internal concept we call Kaizen, which is the Japanese word for continuous improvement. And I went through an exercise once that just proved to me wholeheartedly how important continuing to revisit your systems and processes, not in a waste of time model, but a efficiency model, was for getting better and better and better and doing it better. You don't just build something once and then move on from it. So we look at digital transformation as a cyclical process and not a project. You don't go to the gym for a year, get in really good shape, and then sit at home and go, "I declare victory, I'm done. I don't have to work out anymore," and expect that you're finished. It's a journey that requires consistent effort and a commitment to it. And we do it with this wheel here, and I won't go into it, but it's basically, it starts with vision, strategy, and setup and training, and it goes all the way back around to support and feedback. And then we revisit it, every quarter, every year, and we look at the roadmap and figure out what's important to you for this year. And these are the ways to tackle this. Is a slow simmer investment, as opposed to a burn and done. So anyway, that is it. Please hang out for some Q&A, and I will leave you with this, that we didn't build a pandemic-resistant company, certainly not intentionally. I was attempting to build a sort of a flexible, resilient organization that used technology to solve a certain set of needs, and to sort of maybe throw some traditional business to the wind and do it better. And it just so happened that it made us pandemic resistant as a byproduct. But I think that value prop holds true for a lot of organizations as they move forward from here on out. Thank you.